Blake Murphy's here. Jay's Talk Plus right after the show. What a beauty the guy comes in and actually does this. I was at my mom's place this past weekend.
What a lovely lady.
Yeah, she's great.
I was at my mom's place too.
Yeah, no, we're too
Happy
good.
birthday, Mom.
Happy birthday.
Not
Denise.
today. It was on the weekend, but
Still.
get this. Actually, here, can I tell a mom story that you'll like? So after decades of giving me crap for having so many tattoos,
Now she likes tattoos.
guess who went out and got a birthday tattoo with my other brother?
You didn't go?
They went yesterday.
You weren't invited for the tattoo?
They wanted to do like their own thing.
You're the tattoo guy.
Yeah.
You
Both
couldn't-
my brothers have
I
tattoos
like how there
as
was
well.
no room for you to be joining on the tattoo excursion.
It's fine. I'm not in Kitchener on a Tuesday or
You coulda
wherever
made
they
it.
went.
You could have made it. I
Couldn't.
had-
Unfortunately, I was at that Blue Jays game last night. So.
No, that's awful. I bailed on that. I was supposed to go to that game, and I just
Yeah, I
wasn't.
know.
But no, the reason why I bailed is because I spent 4 days in the sun drinking on the water, and I realized I'm just so old now that this is basically the version. This is a mid-late 30s version of an old person falling and breaking their hip.
You need recovery from your vacation?
I'm just not the same guy ever again.
Yeah.
It's over. Like, I'm not going to be the same. I keep waking up going, maybe I'll get my brain back. And it's not returning.
I understand from a fatigue perspective, but I feel like when it comes to sitting outside drinking beers all day, I'm the Vince Carter meme of I always got one more in me.
I always have one more in me. I'm just saying that I am the actual Vince Carter of
You're done now.
It's over. I got to retire. I'm not the same. I'm doing Biden stuff where I'm just forgetting what I go. Here's the deal. I got to say that to everybody all the time.
Your
Here's
guests
the deal.
are hitting you with.
And I just stare into the abyss, and people go, "What?" And then someone else has to just take over the conversation and start taking it in a different direction.
What was the you're driving the show into trouble 50 yards at a time?
Yeah, it's not good. It's really not good. Okay, so I'm going to start with this. Here's my dumb guy needs a smart guy to explain something to me.
Okay.
Here's what I understand. I understand that there are luxury taxes. I understand that there are financial penalties in certain sports that are not hard capped, such as baseball, such as basketball. Basketball, I think the NBA might have ruined it. They might have destroyed the NBA. You're so thrilled because now...
No, I'm not. I think the second apron stuff sucks.
Okay.
Like, I like the fact that there are loopholes to get above the cap, and there are always there's always a new loophole, right?
Yeah,
but
right
what the
now.
second apron stuff has done is that is the line of there are no more loopholes.
Yeah.
And I'm just never going to be in favor of restricting owner spending if they want to spend.
Yeah.
Like players get the 51% of basketball revenue, however you split it up among players, but I'm not. I don't know. I'm not going to... If a team wants to spend $400 million and
who cares?
get bounced in the second round of the playoffs, make them use loopholes to do it.
Yeah.
Make them, hey, you gotta do this in trade. You can't sign this guy to... You don't have the mid-level, things like that. But this whole, no good teams are trying to add good players and they're letting good players walk for nothing. I don't like it.
I hate it. I hate that they didn't figure out an exemption for guys that have been on your team a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
I hate that they overreacted to the Warriors to that degree where they went, this has happened one time where there was one special team and it happened in the perfect place.
If you're the other 29 owners, the Warriors won a couple championships there, and the 2016 cap spike that they got KD, that was a mistake, and they fixed that with cap smoothing this time. But do you really care that look at the last 5 years? No. The Warriors won one title in the last 6 years, and have spent all-time record high luxury tax payments, and that money goes to all the other teams.
I don't get it.
Why are you trying to stop that? There's enough parity in the NBA. It's hard enough to win year over year. Yeah. There aren't dynasties now. So what do you care if the Clippers spend $1 billion in luxury tax to get bounced in the second round every year? It helps you. You get that money after.
I think it's not just an overreaction to the Warriors spending. I think it was an overreaction to the Warriors dynasty, where people in the league and fans started to go, oh, great, we already know that it's going to be Cavs and Warriors at the end of the year, and what's even the point of watching this? And I think, again, the league overreacted to those times, and they went, well, we want to make sure that there's parity. Also, they wanted to ensure that they didn't have loser franchises you can't have 5-6 Charlotte Hornets.
Right.
You got to have your way out of it. And it did feel and it has actually felt like for a little while that there have been some hardcore loser franchises, but it still doesn't even feel like that's going to change anytime soon with some of them. They're always going to have poorly run franchises.
And like once you get out of the basement of being a loser franchise, like look at the Kings. They wanted to add DeMar DeRozan. And it's like, okay, they paid the Raptors, Davion Mitchell, and 2 seconds to unload Vezenkov for McDaniels.
I do love the way Raptors fans are celebrating this as though it's like an incredible coup. I like Davion Mitchell. I actually think I like him more than the average person because I've actually seen him play. I think people are going to be a little surprised when they watch him here.
He was playing 15 minutes a game off the bench for the game.
I love second-round picks.
Defense first point guards who don't have an offensive game.
I just thought that it was so funny watching Raptors Twitter celebrate this guy going back to Europe. And
my point is just like the Kings have gotten out of the basement of loser franchise, and even they're like, oh, we're going to trade away picks to duck the luxury tax.
Yeah, it sucks. But in baseball, it's a little less clear, right?
We're talking about baseball.
Yeah, this is where this was going.
Yeah.
It was a good rant, though, because we both got to. Because I actually thought that you would be pro this because
I like the loopholes for guys like me. It keeps me employed and stuff like that. But I don't like especially when it comes to retaining your own guys. Like Denver should not be. Denver, 2 years removed from a championship, should not be letting guys walk away because there are too many restrictions on keeping a team together. Like, you want to stop them from going out and signing the next KD, from signing Paul George, whatever. Sure,
that's
but
what I mean.
When you got to lose your own guys for that,
in the old cap, having bird rights was enough of an advantage. And now I actually think that there's got to be some kind of adjustment where, I don't know if it's your rookies or if it's a certain amount of years that a guy is on your team, if it's not as penalized, or if you get one
like
designated
a super bird
player.
right?
Yeah, something. Because as a Toronto sports fan who has been miserable for the last 8 years because of the Leafs and the cap and everyone knowing exactly what percentages and money everybody makes, this was the first time ever, as a Raptors fan, they handed out contracts, and I was extremely aware of what their cap percentages were and vehemently upset about guys getting overpaid and thinking things like, well, why didn't you do it this way? Or who was going to bid that much for quickly? I don't want to have those thoughts when it comes to contracts or with athletes. I just want them. I want to be the sports fan that you and I have made fun of forever, which is get the bag, king. You know, I just want to be like that when I see contracts. Hey, get the bag, king. And that's normally how I feel with baseball, except this. I want to know what the financial repercussions are for the Jays if they don't shed enough salary to get under the tax. And also, it's a two-parter. Try to explain this in the dumbest way possible, okay?
Yeah.
How much do they need to shed? Because are the pending free agents that they have enough money to get under that? How much money would they need to not eat in order to actually get under that luxury tax? Because I know fans think, who cares what ownership spends?
Yeah.
No, you should care, because that is going to directly impact what you end up spending the next year.
And there are three reasons you want to get under the competitive balance tax if you can. And the first one is the big one, which
That's
is
what it's called in baseball.
The CBT.
Yeah.
Which is I thought what I do in therapy, but apparently not. So the big one is, like, if we assume the Blue Jays operate under a budget, which they obviously do, if you pay into the tax this year and you're paying into the tax again next year, that is the third year in a row paying in the tax. So your tax rate, every dollar you go over the tax, you're spending 50%. Like, you're getting taxed at an extra 50% rate. If you could duck below the tax this year, and then you spend in the tax next year, that drops to 20%. So you think about how far your $250 million goes if that's your budget. It goes further if only 20% of those overages are going to the tax rather than 50%.
Okay.
So that's, it's spread. Basically, the first point is it spreads your 2025 budget further because you're paying less tax. The second one, and people won't care about this one as much, but if you go and you sign a free agent from another team that was given the qualifying offer, the compensation pick you give up is less if you're not a tax team. So if you are a tax team and you're spent to the gills and you go and steal someone else's free agent, you got to pay a higher compensation pick. So you could lower the comp pick. And then the third
that's
one,
not nothing, but it's obviously the least of significance. But it's still
the third one, and this one probably doesn't matter because you're probably trading Kikuchi no matter what. But say you didn't trade Kikuchi, say he gets hurt in his next start or something, you give him the qualifying offer and then he walks in free agency, you get a better pick back as compensation if you're not a tax team. So those are the three main ones. But the big one is budget. You're saving budget 2024 with the idea of your money goes further in 2025.
Listen, there's red hot budget talk, all right? Everybody strap in. Okay, so how much do they need to shed?
So this is a hard one because baseball is not as, there are a bunch of things that count toward this tax that we don't have like a clear handle on, but based on
Let's do a rough Blake Murphy educated guesstimate.
So they have to get They have to drop about 11 million.
Yeah.
But baseball does the smart thing. Basketball, when you calculate luxury tax and stuff like that, it's whatever your cap sheet looks like on game 82. In baseball, it's more like hockey, where it's a running total over years. So the Jays, where we are in the season at the deadline, would have to drop about 30 million in, like, when you look at the players' Fangraphs page. So about 30 million in salary. So Kikuchi makes 10, Chad Green makes 10. Chris Bassett makes 20, say Bassett was available. There you go. That's 40 million. If you take no money back, you don't need any money, you're below the CBT level. So that's about what you're looking at, net 30 million. Now, I'm of the mind that if you're a big market team, you should act like a big market team, even as a seller. And if you got to eat some money, if you got to take a contract back to get a better prospect return, you should do that as well. But yeah, 30 million is probably the number-ish they're looking at of, hey, if we cut 30 million in salary, there would be a benefit to that.
Here's the thing. Here's the deal. Here's the deal.
You're feeling silly today, eh?
A little. Again, brain not fully back. I'm with you on the idea of bringing back a better prospect, but I would say that has to be meaningful, just in terms of I'm not generally Mr. believes that you're going to hit on these prospects. I actually, for the main reason I want the Jays to replenish the cupboards is not because I want them to rebuild around the guys that they're going to take pieces back and say like a Gossman deal or a Bassett deal, or even if they moved off of Vladdy or Bo. To me, the reason you get those guys and why the rankings matter is because you can use them in other trades.
Yeah.
You want to be able to flip those dudes at some time when you want to be competitive. And you saw it this year where the Jays flat out could not get in on Juan Soto. They could not get in on that trade. There was nothing that they could do. People kept looking at it and going, well, what about this Berea and all that? And no, they didn't have enough. They need to add more. That's my main thing. I'm fine if they bring back somebody that actually has real, meaningful, significant value. I just have a hard time believing that's going to be the case when we're looking at dudes like Kikuchi, who has not been great and is not a guaranteed starter. When you're looking at Danny Jansen, whose numbers have fallen off of a cliff. Trevor Richards? I don't even know what someone I know, and I know Justin Turner hit a home run yesterday, but I keep thinking, why would anyone even want Justin Turner on their playoff roster at his money?
There's going to be a market for him, like a guy who's been there before, well-liked guy. But we're talking about like
that's what I'm saying.
It's closer to the Kevin Biggio deal of like the Jays eat some of the money and you get a lower-end prospect.
I just don't really see a scenario with the rental players where the Jays are going to get back anybody of consequence. And I brought this up the other day with Gimme Garcia. Maybe he had the full healthy season where he was what he was when he was healthy. Maybe it would have been a little bit higher, but when the Jays traded Daniel Hudson, who was a closer, a back-end reliever when he was having a very good year, they ended up getting some 24-year-old prospect that never pitched for them. Like, that's what happens with relief pitchers, especially expiring relief pitchers. You don't get a ton for it. Does anybody remember what the Jays traded for Jordan Hicks last year?
Sam Robertson and Adam Kloppenstein.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Like, that you're going to get Sam Robertson and Adam Kloppenstein, okay? Yeah. Whatever.
Which, like, they're not nothing. But to your point, too, like, in terms of, are you restocking the cupboard because you're going to have this huge wave of prospects? No, that is what you're doing if you blow it up,
That's what I mean.
If you're trying to compete in 2025, like none of the prospects you get back are going to be ready or good by 2025 anyway. Like, sure, there's a chance that you can basically redo the Teoscar trade, not the Eric Swanson one, the one where they got Teoscar initially. It's like, well, you're the fifth outfielder on a good team. We believe in you more than that. We're going to give you more opportunity. And yeah, a guy hits by 2025. Maybe you can go out and identify that guy. But realistically, you're restocking the farm system because when you engage in trades this offseason, if you're going to compete again in 2025, you don't want to be dealing from a bottom 5, bottom 7 farm system.
Yeah, I don't think that they should be.
Where all your top prospects are hurt.
I've been on the record a million times about this. I think that this should be kind of a soft rebuild, a step back to take steps forward.
So anyone but Vlad is available, basically?
Honestly, to me, Vladdy even is available, but whatever. It's just I think it's kind of strange that Vladdy is a first baseman that if you look at all his actual comps, they make $180 million, Maybe you bump him up to 2 something, and that would be a great deal for him. And yet we're all basically putting him down in pen for $300 million or somewhere around there. You think that...
I don't have it in pen.
But sure, but I'm just saying that... Do you think Vladdy today would accept a $250 million extension?
That's tough. I don't know if he would accept it. I don't know that. I don't think the Jays will go north of that.
Okay, well, but this is why I would be still okay with the trade. I'm not in love with the idea of paying Vladdy this massive surplus because he's the quote unquote face of the franchise, and it kind of feels as though he and his camp will play that, where they go, who are you going to put on the side of the building? Who's going to bring the young fans in? Who are you going to sell as hope? You've been selling this guy since he was 15 years old as the chosen one for the Blue Jays. You're going to walk away from him? You're going to let him walk for nothing? You're going to trade him and then have this trade hanging over? He's kind of the...
Trade him as a rental at that point, right? Because at that point, you'd be dealing with, a
1
year,
left.
half a year...
That's why, to me, I would have just opened up on everybody. The only guy that I basically wouldn't trade is Varsho, and it's simply because you can't trade him after you can't lose that trade twice, okay? And let's not get it twisted. They got murdered in that trade. I don't care how many catches he makes. He's actually potentially going to have a lower OPS this year than he did last year, which is insane. He's got 11 home runs. It's late July.
Moreno's shaking off that tough start too.
Well, and also I hate when people point out the WAR stuff because it's like it's a cumulative stat, and he's a catcher. He's going to play less games. We already had 1 year too where the two guys went to the playoffs and Lourdes absolutely tore the cover off the ball. Yeah. That's a loss. That's a huge loss of a trade. Stop trying to spin it as anything other than that. I think you're basically building around Varsho. He's the most untradeable guy on your roster. Everybody else for me would be up for sale, but whatever. Who cares about that? I do want to see them get below the CBT. I do want to see them shed that salary because there's no reason why you can't sell, trade, move a million pieces, but then be the most aggressive team in free agency again next year and having as much financial might as you possibly can. Go ahead and do that. I just think that you need more prospects because you've seen them try to be a really big financial group. You've seen them what they are as a top 10 payroll. And when you don't have internal development coming up, you don't have the flexibility to make trades. I think it's just next near impossible to win.
Yeah, and look, they have to. I mean, the reality is like the guys who are pending free agents, like they're going to sell those for prospects regardless. Like we're past the point of talking about that. But I do think they need to, in addition to that, listen on some of the guys with term. Like I love Chris Bassett. I love watching Chris Bassett pitch. I like talking to him about pitching and stuff like that. He is going to be 36 next year and has 1 year left on his contract. And this is probably the highest his value will ever be when there are so few starters on the market. Do I think you could do better than Chris Bassett at $21 million next year in your rotation going into free agency? Probably not, but you then also have the prospect capital and you have more than the $21 million to spend. So I think you got to listen on him. Like this idea that like a guy like Chad Green or Isaiah Kiner-Falefa wouldn't be available because they have term is, I think, silly and a bluff.
That's crazy. No. I don't believe that stuff. I just think that it's more so that who is really trading for Isaiah Kiner-Falefa coming off of an injury.
Allegedly, the Yankees want both of those guys back.
I watched the Yankees-Mets game. I watched the end of it last night. That Yankees team around those two guys right now is horrific. And Ben Rice, who was having this unbelievable start to his Yankees career, they said since the All-Star break, he's got one hit. He's regressing into Ben Rice.
Gabe Gross again.
Yeah, anyway. I think that the main issue for them in this is they want to at least allude to being competitive.
Yeah. And
they're in this horrible spot where Bo, you can't trade now because of the injury, but there's nothing you can do there from a pivot standpoint. Gavin Lux, by the way, NL Player of the Month or week?
Week, I think.
Week, yeah, whatever. He's been great all of a sudden, and I went, maybe you should have traded Bo. Guy. Maybe you missed the vote on this. You can't trade Bo, and then with your pitchers, to me it seems pretty clear and obvious that they don't want to basically be saying we're rebuilding, and that's what it says if you start next year with whatever pitchers that...
Yariel Rodriguez is your number one starter.
Well, that's it. Yeah. You right now, if you remove any of those guys, just one of them for next season, you've got to get, 4 starting pitchers?
Yeah.
Because Bowden, Francis...
And a whole new bullpen.
That's what I'm saying. It's actually too much, especially considering all the bats. You
and
can
so
kind
this
of fake
is my
competing
problem
next year.
This is my problem with the whole competing in 2025 thing in general, is that like they're
Makes
10
no
games
sense.
under 500.
Yeah, you suck.
And like a full season of George Springer being better and Bo being better, like that doesn't make up 10 games in the wild card standings alone.
People are buying that George Springer is going to be this for the entire next season?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's great that he's done this. competitiveness, and who knows, maybe we can talk about him as like a 750 OPS guy for next year or something like that.
I'd be just trying to talk about selling him at some point during the offseason if he continues to tear it up, and just seeing how much you have to eat.
And here's the thing that they're going to face in 2025, like barring extensions for Bo and Vlad, which don't feel super realistic at this point in time, at least. You're going to head into 2025 where, yes, you're going to spend in free agency. You'll make some trades. You'll turn around and move some of that extra prospect capital for guys. Like, they will compete, but they are going to compete with like 1 foot kind of out and ready to hit the eject button. Because if they were, 5 games under 500 at the deadline next year, and Bo's on his last year, Vlad's on his last year, Bassett's an expiring, Gosman's closer to free agency, etc., I think then they would have no choice but to do the full blow it up. So they've got to try to do this very carefully, because there is you're not, in addition to trading away the guys who are expiring here, it helps, but you have so much work to do for 2025 to get this team back to being competitive. Like, anyone can make the third wild card, whatever. But like, those were not the aspirations for this window. And if 2025 is the last year of the window, like, you have a lot of work to do, and it's not just going to be selling Kikuchi and Jimmy Garcia that does that work.
Well, I think what's driving me most crazy about all of this is, and I should say that there's some of the people that I was speaking to who were in team, I think this group can win next year, have, I think, quieted down a little bit with me, have opened up more of the idea of, maybe you don't want to compete this way. But when you look outside of Toronto right now, like, I saw the foul territory guys with Ken Rosenthal yesterday talking about a Vladdy trade. And Ken Rosenthal's going, this makes no sense. This is an insider. These guys trade in kind of being politically correct in the spaces and usually not hammering franchises for their decision making. And this guy is just both barrels out, taking shots at the Jays front office, going, how does this make any sense? Like, outlining what we all know, which is they need an entirely new bullpen, right? They're going to need, BNS and I talk about it, like 6-7 guys potentially. They're going to need at minimum 3 starters going into next year. At least guys that are, underneath, because the Ricky Tiedemann thing is done. I'm not. Sorry, he's not done in terms of his career. I just want to clarify this.
You can't pencil him in for a major league role next year.
You can't be saying, well, next year we're going to have him. You're still not going to have Manoah back. They got a third of the batting order to build out, because Lord knows you can't be starting the season with Ernie Clement, Davis Schneider, Spencer Horowitz, and
like all of the AAA guys are up.
Yeah,
like, there's still some guys of interest, but like their AAA, and this doesn't really matter, but their AAA and double A teams are both in last place too. It's not like there are waves of, like, the guys who were knocking on the door are here.
Yeah, it just kills me that basically everybody with a brain is saying the same thing, which is the strategy of only moving rental pieces for small, ready-made assets is not a viable strategy in terms of trying to win in 2021. It's step one of what should be multi-step plan. For that to be your step one, and then step two is you go into free agency and try to build a winner around a team that's been a loser this entire time. Yeah, I'm not buying it.
And it's tough too, because, like, first of all, I mean, free agency is like, it can be pretty hit or miss. We saw how weak the free agent class got this offseason by the time guys sign new deals and stuff like that.
How many times too in free agency where they go, oh, we're thinking about a Brandon Nimmo type, where you say, well, we actually would really like this player, and then they end up going for $50 million more than you expected them to. Like, there's too many variables at play for you to plan on building through free agency.
And one thing they've done well is hit well on free agents starting pitchers, which is probably the hardest thing to do. But like, you don't want to have everything you're doing hinge on your ability to like hit more low. Like you keep hitting on 17. Like,
no, of course, man.
Like, one of them is gonna bust somewhere here. And like, I don't know, maybe they just have this unbelievable ability to hit on free agent starting pitching deals. But realistically, your hopes have to hinge on more than that. Also, we've seen a version of this exact core have the best rotation since like the 80s for a Blue Jays team, and still it not be enough.
My biggest point with this group is when you're looking forward to 2025, at least last offseason, you could point to, well, the rotation was so good, and maybe there's this positive regression with the bats and with Manoah, and hey, there's a realistic opportunity for you with this pitching staff. Now, just the staff is, you cannot tell me that this version of Barrios, who, by the way, I think it's a conversation for a different day, but I don't I don't think that you're ever going to see All-Star Barrios again.
I don't know about that, but I think Jose Barrios needs a break.
I have sold all of my Barrios stock.
He needs a break.
I don't think you're ever going to see ace Kevin Gossman. Maybe you see him in small spurts, but I don't think you see it over the course of an entire year. And I love Bassett, and he's an innings eater. But yeah, I think his best destiny moving forward is an awesome Mark Burley type where you hope that his ERA is around 4. He eats innings for you. And yeah, you can put him out there for reasonable quality starts. Anyway, let's pivot to some basketball because this morning, actually, just as we were on air, Wojnarowski reported that Pacers guard Andrew Nembhard has agreed to a 3-year, $59 million extension. God, this money is so insane right now. That's the maximum allowable for that term for Nembhard, who had this awesome breakout performance during the playoffs this past year. A really good piece for the Pacers. Went from a guy that we all thought would be, not even, I think, the centerpiece of a Pascal Siakam trade. We kind of thought that the picks plus him were a combined centerpiece. Doesn't end up in that trade. They hold firm on it. People are going, how do you not even get Nembhard? Then he starts to play incredibly well. How much do you think this pisses off Jamal Murray watching Andrew Nembhard get a huge bag of money and his team say, don't worry, you're at the Olympics and we'll still pay you right now? Do you think the Pacers, a team from America, are playing chess deciding to do this right before the tournament starts with Jamal Murray?
Yeah, they're actually trying to be Canada's team.
They
have Nembhard, they have Mathurin, they have Siakam, who Toronto fans are obviously fond of. Tyrese Halliburton's not playing for the U.S. anymore. He's like fallen out of the rotation. Indiana is Canada's team now. No, I mean, it's great for Nembhard. It is evidence that there are definitely some teams who don't worry that much about their guys going to the Olympics, especially if, Canada basketball does a good job communicating with teams and coaches and stuff like that. Yeah. There's also a big difference between $50 million and $209 million, which is with what Jamal Murray's negotiating right now.
There's also, if you're the Pacers, I think you want Nembhard being a pivotal guy in meaningful games for Team Canada, whereas if you're the Nuggets watching Jamal Murray, you're like, we know what you are when you're healthy with Jokic and how important you are to this team. We don't need you developing with Team Canada anymore. Yeah,
and I think, Calvin Booth, the Nuggets GM, has been like pretty on record that he's a big believer that the international play helps guys and stuff like that. Like Jokic is obviously there. They've sounded pretty on board. Booth, there was a quote in Michael Grange's piece yesterday from Calvin Booth that basically said like, no, we told Jamal, like, go do the Olympics, and like we'll get that extension done when you're back. Like, it doesn't sound like there's a lot of risk.
We'll get this extension done when you're back, and we can get our doctors to look at how much damage was done during this run. Because I don't think that
7 minutes in an exhibition game isn't going to do that much damage. I'd be very curious to have someone leak to me the minutes played list for that closed door scrimmage they're having today against Brazil. Would love to know how many minutes he plays in that game.
I don't think this is complicated. I think he's hurt. I think he was hurt in the playoffs. I think he's an injury-prone guy.
I definitely think he was banged up in the playoffs.
Yeah. Whatever. He was hurt, not injured. He was hurt, not injured. There were so many moments. And I don't care about how great those defenders were, right? Because, yes,
he wasn't the same guy as the playoffs before. Anyone will tell
defenders,
you that.
But the size really affected him because he didn't have the same level of explosion.
Yeah.
He had a very short window to try and recover. He's back there with Team Canada, and he's probably worrying a little bit about his money. He's probably trying to weigh the pros and cons of playing through this injury and how much damage can be done. And he's going to go play because he has been dying to be an Olympian. He's been on record with that for years.
Yeah.
But what has held him off of Team Canada in the past? It's been the injuries. And I think at best, you're getting some kind of 75% healthy player who plays 20-some minutes a night.
Yeah, I think, honestly, in my head, at least for the group stage, like I have it in my head as like if he plays 16 minutes a game, like you get 8 minutes a half.
The problem is you need him in the group stage.
I know.
Australia's got 11 to 12 guys that have been in or play in the NBA.
Yeah.
Greece has Giannis. Do you think Giannis can't win a game?
And Spain is Spain. Like Spain, like I know the odds makers don't like Spain's chances, and we saw Canada beat them. They came 9th in the World Cup and stuff, but it's still Spain.
No, it's still Spain. I keep thinking about when Giannis looks at Team Canada and says, "Oh, they're a heavy favorite," and then he goes, "Who's in the paint?" They're like, "It's Kelly Olynyk and Kem Birch. They're going to be down there preventing you from going to the rim." But they've got perimeter defenders. He's like, "Sorry, so Dillon Brooks is going to lock up Giannis Antetokounmpo?" I was like, okay. How many points is Giannis over under in the Team Canada game? Because I would like to go over. I would like to smash the over that this guy. He could set an Olympic record in that game.
It's going to be high. Greece is like a couple pieces too short, but Nick Calathes is like a really good point guard too. And like in a lot of their Olympic qualifying games, like when things get dire, it's like, oh, you have the smart veteran point guard just running pick and roll with literally Giannis. Like that's a pretty easy bake offense.
Yeah,
there.
It's very nice. Having a Giannis is going to make other Greek players better. But okay, so all of this is to say, to kind of tie this all together, what is your feeling of having a diminished Jamal Murray at the Olympics in terms of Canada's medal chances? Because I think that the whole idea of this was that, yes, Canada has perimeter defenders. Yes, we're deeper than ever. Yes, we have a lot of good players. But that it was going to be a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander with Jamal Murray backcourt that was going to drive Canada's success. And now I don't know if you can rely on it being a two-headed monster.
Yeah, I'm with you to that extent. You know, if you're getting 20 minutes of Jamal Murray or 16 minutes of Jamal Murray, you're probably bringing him off the bench at that point too. And like he'll play some minutes with Shai, but it's more about spreading the offensive talent around so that that bench unit has a little more scoring juice. Like you're going to have Nembhard and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, which as far as bench defensive backcourts go is great, but like you need a scorer in there as well. So Jamal going into that, you know, maybe that's the better role. And yeah, maybe he closes alongside Shai, but you probably bring him off the bench if he's not playing a full role. So in terms of their medal chances, like, look, assuming Jamal Murray plays 20 minutes a game and looks like Jamal Murray, I think they're the second best team in the tournament. I still think that. If Jamal Murray is hobbled or is only playing 12 minutes a game or is out, I think they probably drop below Serbia. And their pool is just so deep that like one bad game could cost you the chance to advance. Like those are the table stakes when you get to the Olympics. Like, sorry, you didn't draw into the group with South Sudan and Puerto Rico or with Japan and Brazil. Like you're going to have to fight every one of these games. So yeah, I still think, you know, the odds makers certainly think they're the second best team in the tournament. I think that is true with the Jamal Murray asterisk. And if he looks like he looked in the Puerto Rico game or the US game, I probably slide Canada to third behind Serbia.
The big thing, though, is, again, that Nembhard has been so awesome that it really does feel as though it's cushioning the blow in a pretty significant way.
Yeah, and he's great. It's just Jamal Murray's ability to get a bucket and get hot from three is something that, like, you can't replicate on this roster. And, like, you look at that team, obviously the U.S. was not nearly the same team in the World Cup, but this is a team that came third in the World Cup and got significantly better. And Jamal Murray, they didn't have Jamal Murray. Like Jamal Murray, the minutes they're giving him are replacing the like Trey Bell, Haynes, Phil Scrubb minutes. Like it's still a big upgrade on what they had last time out. It's just, we were dreaming on, you know, playoff Game 7 clutch Jamal Murray, which, you know, I don't know. Maybe we're not getting in this tournament.
Can I give you one halfway positive spin that I have? Because let's be real here. I don't think having a diminished version of Jamal Murray makes Team Canada better, okay?
Versus the World Cup?
What do you mean?
You just said a diminished version of Jamal Murray doesn't make Team Canada better.
Yeah, I'm saying that if he was healthy, fully healthy, Canada would be at their very best.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Okay. I thought you meant just better compared to 2023.
No, but what I would make the case for, what I would at least put out there is, I don't want to say people are forgetting how great Shai is, but I do think that he is still a little underrated or underappreciated. There's still almost, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but I think in the NBA community, and he's like really respected and people love his game, but because he plays different, because he's not Anthony Edwards where he jumps out of the gym and he's talking a ton of trash and he gets to be the face of the league, because he's on Oklahoma City and he's got a herky jerk style, because the way he shoots it with mid-range pull-ups, you go, well, this is not what we've been designed to really think is the most efficient thing, because he's a really good passer, but not the best and not the flashiest of guys, that people kind of look at him and go, yeah, you're a star. We're willing to acknowledge that you are this. But it's almost, you have to look at the box scores and say, what is there a little bit of inflation here? Is this fully correct? He's incredible. And having him be the clear number one on the team, instead of having Jamal Murray and him kind of have the dueling banjos of who's taking the last shot at the end of the game. You know who I want taking the last shot of every single game, even with healthy Jamal Murray? It's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. When I said that thing about Giannis Antetokounmpo, you know what the strongest case for Canada is that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is not that far off, in my opinion, from Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Canada has him plus a bunch of way better players around him. Yeah. Like, Shai was incredible for Canada at the World Cup. And I imagine
there was a case that he could have won MVP on a third place team. Like, it wasn't the strongest case in the world, but like he outplayed Luka. Him and Bogdanovic, who I know NBA people don't all the way appreciate. He's like one of the best FIBA style players in the world. And like obviously Schroeder won it because Germany won, but like Shai had a better tournament than a lot of those guys. Like there is a case to be made that Shai, like, absolutely in any circumstances could be the best player in any game, but
That's
will be the best player in. I probably wouldn't say that in the Greece game. I'd just imagine Giannis is, especially with that matchup. But Shai is like, you're going to have the best player in most of your games.
But that's kind of where I'm going with it. Is I don't think that most people are ready, and maybe it's because he needs another full year, maybe he needs another experience like this, or maybe he needs just one more playoff run. But people look at, say, what I would call the Luka Giannis tier, right? Of those kind of guys, the Jokic, Luka, Giannis, that kind of level of superstar. And I don't think that most would have Shai in that club, whereas I think he is in that club. And I know people voted for him to be runner-up for MVP this year, so you're saying, how could you say that when this just happened? I mean that on a regular day-to-day basis, if we're just picking players, right? You go and you did a draft, and this tournament draft was done. I think there would be more guys that would go ahead of Shai that would, in my opinion, not or should not go ahead of Shai. He is a absolute game changer, and having him just be the face of your team, the alpha of your team, no chemistry issues because of, hey, who's taking last shot, who's the leader, who's the offense running through. It might end up being a small blessing in disguise. That's all I'm saying.
It might help Jamal too. Like, you come in those minutes and it's Shai's show and you get off the ball and you bang threes.
Yeah.
It's a simplified thing and it's a little less pressure.
Yeah. Okay. So last thing on this, because you got to go and do your own show. Who's the player? Or I'll do this way, because I was going to say player, but what's the player or the storyline? One of the two that you're most excited for, but you can't pick Shai. And the Jamal Murray injury is.
For Canada?
Yeah, for Canada.
I want to see how much Dillon Brooks can repeat the 2023 World Cup.
That's the only answer.
He broke like a ton of FIBA records for three-point shooting and stuff. That he's not going to shoot 70% on threes or 120 true shooting or whatever it is again. But he's going to, between him and Dort, guard some of the best players in the world. And he's going to be an agitator. He's getting booed in France in exhibition games already. He's getting booed in Vegas against the U.S. team. And obviously he's a guy that comes up against that line and can sometimes cross it. But last year in the World Cup, did a very good job staying just on this side of that line. I'm excited. And I think, defensively, if they do bring Jamal off the bench, there's cool stuff you can do with having Brooks and Dort in your starting lineup. It's, it's spacing issue or whatever. But like that Giannis thing, okay, Dort's on Giannis, Brooks is on Calathes, and we're the only team that can switch that action and try to survive it, whatever. I'm very curious what Olympic Dillon Brooks is like, and like just how puffed out the chest gets if they start this tournament hot and he's hot from three.
I just mentioned that I think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander might be one of the best 4 or 5 players on planet Earth, and Dillon Brooks was as good, if not, well, he won the MVP for them, but he was as good or as important for Canada as Shai was. If you end up getting, every country always has the role player that ends up being the FIBA superstar. And Dillon Brooks is a little bit more than that.
Dennis Schroeder is the greatest point guard of all time when he puts on the Germany jersey.
That's it. And so why can't Dillon Brooks be that for Canada at this tournament? Why can't Team USA fans be going, can you believe Dillon Brooks goes from being Rockets Dillon Brooks to one of like Kevin Durant level importance for Team Canada?
LeBron might lose his mind.
Yeah, that's it. I'm extremely, extremely, extremely excited for Dillon Brooks because, and not just because it's fun to root for the villain, it's also an interesting story because if he does suck and he keeps talking this way, it's embarrassing. Like there's stakes
what happened
with
last
Brooks.
time, right? It's like you didn't pay the check when it came, so it would be I mean, obviously, I don't want to play that scenario out. I would rather he just be awesome. But it is fascinating from a character perspective of like, what if it doesn't go well? What does that look like?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Blake Murphy, Blue Jays Talk Plus, right after the show. Go back to work. See you, buddy.